Unfortunately, some end users still have this policy of run to fail. In other words, they'll keep the equipment installed and running even beyond the manufacturer's useful life. So we're going to talk about why that's not a good idea. And the first thing we're going to look at is what's characterized as the bathtub curve. And the bathtub curve is what most reliability engineers refer to as how we characterize how a product's life goes. And as you can see here, at the beginning, we typically have a high number of failures. So these are the failures, and over here is time. So what most manufacturers will do is they do some testing, they do some environmental testing, because what they want to do is wheedle out these weaker units. And this is commonly referred to as infant mortality. And then what happens, as you can see, is it tends to flatten out. And during this period, which we call the flat portion of the bathtub curve, is relatively constant until we get to here, where you can see there's now a sharp increase in failures. And at this time, this is known as the wear out. Now, why is this important? It's important for a number of reasons. So, when manufacturers for safety products create their safety manuals, they will put in there what the useful life of the product is. And the useful life basically is between these 2 points. And what we do is we take an average, and as you can see, the average is slightly more pessimistic, which is not a bad idea. And this is known as useful life here. And of course, useful life is during the constant failure rate portion of the curve. It's important for a number of reasons. When we talk about our probability of failure on demand, our PFD average, this is predicated on a constant failure rate during useful life. And of course, when we look at PFD average, and here's our PFD, and here's our time. This would be our mission time. We know that during the portion until we do our proof testing, if we get a demand here, we know our PFD average is going to be very low. But if we get a demand here, we know that our PFD average is going to be much higher. So what value do we take? And we approximate by taking the mean, the middle, the average. And this is because during useful life, we can say that we can take this average value and we can reliably predict what the PFD is going to be during useful life for the equipment. Now the problem comes, of course, is once we get outside of useful life, because now when we get outside of useful life, we cannot rely on this constant failure rate. And therefore, if we cannot rely on the constant failure rate, and our PFD average calculation now is not going to be valid, then our SIL is no longer reliable. So if you are running to fail, once you get outside of the useful life for the equipment in a safety instrumented function, then you're going to be invalidating your SIL because you cannot rely on it due to the fact that now you're into the wear out stage where it's no longer predictable. So just think about that and think about your policy for run to fail, because it's not appropriate for a safety instrumented function and safety instrumented system.